Good morning and welcome back to Gaming with ADHD, where today we're going to be continuing that deep dive that you are all enjoying oh so very much through the Alternity role-playing game Game Master's Guide. Now, today we're looking at Chapter 15, Adventure Design. So, this, I have not looked at it at all prior to now, and honestly, as somebody who considers himself a novice GM at best, honestly, I'm hoping to get some good information. I really liked the setting design. Actually, no, it wasn't called setting design. What was it called? Um, the campaign design and campaign architecture chapters were absolutely fantastic. I highly recommend that you go back and check out those two videos from last Wednesday and Thursday. I even skipped over a bunch of information just because when it was like it was detailing a lot of stuff that is still good information. I'm not saying it's not good information. Um, but it was just getting kind of dry for a live stream. And it's a lot of important information, but stuff go read the book. One thing I did find that I really appreciated is it was a lot of information that when this came out in 1998, there weren't a ton of resources. There wasn't Wikipedia. There were, like being able to collate all the things that would be required to create a science fiction galaxy. Uh, it existed. It just wasn't as accessible. And so I think the way the book put that together really did help as far as that goes. So today, looking at adventure design, I'm hoping to pick up some more tips just as far as specifically designing adventures for a science fiction system. Obviously, with fantasy, it's you've got the tried and true, dungeon crawl, things like that. But science fiction does work a little bit different. It's not always find the monster and kill it. So, anyways, hoping we get some really good information. Now, keep in mind, it is a bit of a smaller chapter. So, for all intents and purposes, we're going to knock this out pretty quick today. I did only plan on doing one chapter, but we'll see what the chat's going like. And so we might add another one. But for right now, I am planning on just one chapter a day for adventure design today, optional rules tomorrow, and then creatures and aliens on Friday. Um, the catch there being that um, that's all. Those are all really, really short chapters. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. Anyways, I'm kind of rambling and ranting. So, with that said, before we get started here, as always, I do request that if you enjoy these videos, hit the like button. It absolutely, helps the algorithm, and make sure you're subscribed. While this week is going to be the end of the Alternity series, there's going to be at least one more video coming out of a live play that we did a couple of weeks ago. Or let me rephrase that. It's not another video of the live play we did a couple of weeks ago. It's the continuation of said live play, because we still have to go through and finish that module. I am hoping and planning on doing some other adventures later on down the road. But I am also going to be covering other games. Like I've said previously, right now my plan is to cover one of the Fragged books, uh, possibly Fragged Kingdom, maybe Fragged Empire. Depends. I'm going to reach out to the creator and see what he'd prefer I cover. I know that Kingdom is coming out soon, so I think he might like that one. But anyways, needless to say, that's coming up soon. It won't be next week because I will be out of town again. And so we're going to pick that up in 2 weeks. So again, make sure you're subscribed so that you can see that when it comes out. But then other than that, I can't think of anything else. So let's go ahead and get started for the day. All right. We are looking at chapter 15, Adventure Design. Now, let's see. The basic structure of all adventures is simple. The game master presents a situation, the players make decisions for their heroes, and the game master provides a challenge, combat, and encounter scenes in response to those decisions. The two different types of adventure design are spontaneous and planned. Don't be confused by these terms. Even spontaneous adventures require some planning to pull off. Yeah, I am really bad at the spontaneous side. That is something that I struggle with. Um, which is one reason that I hijacked my friends into letting me run uh the Alternity game. So definitely it's one of the things that I'm trying to work at to be a little bit better. And I'm even running a module, so it's would technically come under planned, but you know what? You can still be spontaneous with a planned adventure as well. So, all right, spontaneous adventures. Designing a spontaneous adventure. Why is this? Oh, stop it. I don't want to show the toolbars. I want a little more screen time. There we go. Oh, stop it. There we go. All right. Sorry. I was being whiny. All right. Designing a spontaneous adventure doesn't take long. All you need are a few notes to get the story underway. After that, you improvise in reaction to the decisions of your players. Running a spontaneous adventure isn't quite so easy as designing it. You have to think fast to keep the story going every time your players decide what their heroes will do. To help you through that thinking process, you have a foundation of information to fall back on. A foundation consisting of a story idea, its background, a supporting cast, and the trigger that got the adventure started. Each of these elements is explained below. After you read the entire section, you'll have a clear picture of how they fit together. The story idea. The basic idea behind your story can come from anywhere. A favorite book or movie, a player's suggestion, events in previous adventures, the daily news, real world history, or even situations suggested by everyday life. You need to give your idea a science fiction spin, if it doesn't have that already, to make it fit within the confines of your campaign. An idea can range from a simple image or concept to a full blown story. It can center around a problem the heroes must solve, a foe they must confront, a new bit of technology they must find or retrieve, or an interesting location they must visit or explore. In a spontaneous adventure, the idea should tie into the trigger, but you won't build a solid plot around your idea. Let the plot develop as the player's heroes interact with the story. Background. Once you have an idea, you need to develop a background, the events that lead up to the opening scene. A background can be as simple or complex as you feel necessary. It can suggest the direction of the adventure or the way certain scenes play out. It also provides the story's driving force and impetus. In this way, the background leads to the trigger just as the trigger leads to the adventure that follows. You can't control the story decisions of the players, and you really shouldn't try to. But you do have total control of the background. The more details you build into the background, the more you'll have to draw from as the adventure unfolds. So that again is another thing that I struggle with is trying to work with the players instead of railroading them and making them do what I want them to do. One thing that was actually kind of interesting in the game that we were running, as it started, the power shut off to the station. And so literally every single time they were trying to get through a door, it was a challenge that they had to get through, whether a mechanical one, a feat of strength, something like that. And it actually was something that ended up frustrating the players a little bit. But over time, they was like, okay, this is a problem. Let's go to engineering. Let's get the power back on. As soon as they did that, it's like, oh, this problem has gone away. You can now go through doors normally. So it was one of those things where it was kind of odd because it felt like I was railroading the players, but they still had a lot of autonomy in how they went about it, and it ended up working out okay. So, that worked, but something to consider. All right, supporting cast. Any adventure you design needs to have a supporting cast of characters. At least one of these characters must have a connection to the background. The others can appear in the story as the adventure progresses. Villains, allies, opponents, experts, innocent bystanders, disinterested third parties, even crazed creatures terrifying the countryside can be supporting cast characters, depending on the scope of the adventure. When you create a villain or some other character you think will play a pivotal role in the adventure, design that character using the full character generation rules. Excuse me for a second. Hi, Bear. Guess what? We're talking about adventures, ones that might include a lot of doors. Just thought you'd like to know. Less important or one-time use characters, such as hired muscle or professional experts, need to be described only in terms of those statistics likely to come into play. For example, hired muscle needs statistics such as durability ratings, combat and defensive skill scores, and armor and weapon information. Experts just need skill scores related to their area of expertise. You can sum up many supporting cast members with a single descriptive sentence and possibly a single skill score. Of course, if the heroes decide to interact with a lesser character, you may have to make up details on the spot, but that's okay. Just build upon what you do know about the character and adjust to meet the current needs of the story. So I really like what they're saying here. About taking these NPCs and just give them what they need. Don't worry about building out the whole thing. Like combat characters, give them all the stats, give them the guns, give them the, figure out what their damage capacity is. If it's an NPC that for like a visiting scientist or something along those lines, give them the skills that they need. You don't need to worry about, hit points, things like that, because they're probably not going to be in combat. Just figure out what you need for them and keep it simple. I like that. All right, Chapter 6, Supporting Cast, contains information about assigning game statistics to minor and major supporting cast members. You can use the templates in that chapter to quickly generate certain types of pre-made characters for use in your adventures. We covered that like 3 weeks ago, so it's in the list. Go find it. All right, the trigger. All right, I like that they actually named this. Because it, at least for my brain, it does say something about what it is and how it impacts the adventure. So I'm going to say that up front. And actually, I will also admit the way that it's written in the module that we're running, for me, I thought was a nice jumping off point. It's here's where the characters are. This is what's happening. This is why they're going to do stuff. And, it's sort of like a cold open kind of a thing. So at least that's how I interpreted it. All right, let's keep reading. An idea, background, and supporting cast make up most of the foundation upon which an adventure is built. The only thing you're missing is the trigger, the groundbreaking moment that releases the adventure's potential and gets the story going. Like other aspects of adventure design, the trigger can consist of pages of detailed information or just a few simple notes. It depends on your basic adventure idea and the opening scene you envision. No matter how simple or complicated a trigger is, it must accomplish some important goals. Set the mood and the tone of the adventure. Get the heroes involved in action right away. Establish a setting in which the action takes place. Introduce a supporting cast that provides opposition to the heroes, and force the players to make a decision about what their heroes will do. This is exactly what the opener of our adventure did. All of the players they were supposed to be, going to bed for the night on the space station. One of them decided that he was somewhere else. I rolled with it. It was fine. It ended up being fun. But again, it's like, okay, so you're all turning in for the night. Suddenly the power goes out, the emergency lights come on. So it's like, okay, something's wrong, something's happening. Okay, we're gonna open the door. The doors are all locked. You know, suddenly it's the bane of everybody's existence. I'm gonna do this. Nope, you're gonna fail your roll, so it's not gonna happen. I'm gonna try and brute force my way through there. Nope, it that didn't work either. Or you know what? I'm gonna give it to you. Anyways, but it did get them moving and it got things going. A lot of the opposition was actually the station itself, as opposed to NPC. So I was lucky there. But again, it got the players in, and I did really like it. All right, mood and tone. Based on the environment and the atmosphere in which it takes place, on the behavior of the supporting cast, and on the type of challenge it puts before the heroes, the trigger sets the mood and the tone of the adventure. An adventure intended to scare your players should have an atmosphere that projects a dark, deliberate mood, while an action oriented adventure has a brisk, non stop mood. The trigger should also establish the tone of the adventure to come. A trigger with a light tone, populated by characters who snap off one liners, is very different from a mysterious tone with characters using silence and strange actions to paint a nightmarish or surreal feeling. The tone of the trigger can be dictated by the adventure itself or by the genre of the campaign setting. The space opera, science fantasy, grim reality, post apocalyptic, and techno thriller genres have certain conventions and attitudes that make them different from one another. Chapter 13, Campaign Design, outlines some of the more popular science fiction genres you might want to use for the campaign. That was 2 episodes ago. Go check that out. Regardless of genre, individual adventures can sometimes break the mold to tell a specific story. Just be sure you carry the tone throughout, both in your descriptions of settings and action, and in the way you have the supporting cast talk and act. Heroes in action. Role playing games are about dramatic tension. Something exciting should occur during play, like opening doors. Sure, there are slow times, periods where players can catch their breath, but you should never lose sight of the idea that a role playing adventure is like a movie or a novel. Every event should advance the story in some manner, whether it's the adventure or the personal stories of the heroes. When the action looks like it's about to grind to a halt, it's up to the game master to keep it going. All right, that was absolutely something that I got called out on, which the players were very, very forgiving. I'm not saying that they were beating me up on it, because I specifically asked for feedback. I wanted to know what I did wrong, what my problems were, and that was one of my big issues, is that I let things, I let the failure of the players stop the game. you know Whereas, the doors were there. I don't regret the doors, but working with the players, working with their failures, I should have done more of that. um as opposed to just like, oh, you failed, you're stuck, haha, try again. um but it definitely gave me something to think about for the next time. I mean, it's okay to sometimes to let it, grind to a halt. Sometimes it just means the players need to problem solve a little bit. But there does come a point where, you know, they're done problem solving, and, you know, you need to find a way to keep it going. All right, the best way to keep the action moving is to prepare a good adventure trigger. Your trigger should literally burst with action. Remember, however, that action doesn't necessarily involve combat. It does involve conflict, though. Without conflict, a complication or challenge of some sort, like a bunch of locked doors, you don't have action. Use the trigger to set up the initial conflict, then help guide your players as their heroes act and react to resolve the conflict. Action in a challenge scene can be achieved by the heroes receiving an encoded message timed to self destruct, or the arrival of a mortally wounded ally who has vital information for the heroes, provided they can keep him alive long enough to hear his tale. Action in a combat scene is pretty straightforward. The action is the combat itself. A trigger designed to provoke a combat scene could start with an ambush, a direct attack upon the heroes, or a brawl in a public place. A threat of violence is often as good as violence itself, since it provides a distinct possibility that combat will ensue. Bear in mind that the combat doesn't have to involve the heroes. They could start out as witnesses to an attack or to the threat of violence to another character. Action in an encounter scene can involve the conducting of tense negotiations or interacting with the denizens of an underworld hangout trying to get information. Pure role playing with dice rolls thrown in every so often to decide other characters' moods and attitudes can be full of action, especially when the stakes are high. All right, let me check something real quick. Do I want to look at this side? This is a big sidebar. No, gotta be. All right. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna read that, but let me check. Okay, you know what? Let's finish this, and then we'll go back and read the sidebar, and then we'll come back to planned adventures. All right, there we go. Making decisions on the fly. All right, setting. Obviously, every part of an adventure takes place in a certain location. The setting of your trigger scene might help convey to your players the sort of adventure their heroes are getting into. A trigger that takes place in the middle of a riot on the street suggests a different sort of adventure from one that is set in a scientific laboratory. Note, however, that suggests is a keyword in that last sentence. Every scene in your adventure can have a different setting, and some of those settings might have nothing in common. Or they might be on the same space station with the same locked doors. Supporting cast. As discussed earlier, a supporting cast is an essential element of any adventure. The supporting cast in your trigger might be composed of minor characters that will never be encountered again in the adventure. You could use the trigger to introduce the adventure's major villain, who of course makes an escape so he or she can reappear later. In some kinds of challenge scenes, the supporting cast, whatever provides opposition for the heroes, might be an inanimate object, such as a door that must be unlocked, or a situation, a chasm that must be crossed. No trigger is complete without some sort of supporting cast, whatever form it will take. What will they do? Finally, all triggers provide the players with choices. What will the heroes do in response to the situation they're confronted with? An adventure starts by presenting the heroes with something to do. In general, something to do translates into story decisions. However you structure your trigger, the buildup should end with that most important question. What are your heroes going to do? How the players answer this question gets the gameplay underway. After the trigger. What happens after the trigger is entirely up to you and your players. You present the trigger scene, providing a conflict and something for the heroes to do. Then you let the players role play. How their heroes react and the decisions they make should carry the adventure forward in true group storytelling style. Exactly. Yes, I really like the way that they put that. And again, a lot of this is stuff that I definitely need to work on, but that's part of the reason that I'm reading this. All right, the beginning. An adventure can begin before the action starts or when the action is already underway. For an adventure to begin before the action starts, all that's necessary is for the heroes to take the first step toward completing their goal. For example, an adventure could open with your players' heroes receiving a mission from the director of their organization. They would then spend the first part of the adventure investigating various leads to determine the best way to accomplish their goal. By their very nature, adventures that open before the action starts may take a little while to get up to speed, but that's okay. Like a roller coaster ride, this type of adventure starts with a slow, steady climb. Then it gets to the top of the incline, teeters for a moment, and drops with a gut-wrenching burst of speed. An adventure that begins with an action-packed moment can get going in one of two ways. You can involve the heroes directly in the action, or you can include them as witnesses to events that occur to another cast member. Involving the heroes directly in the action is fairly simple. When the game session begins, simply inform your players of the tense situation. For example, you could open an adventure with the heroes hurtling out of a plane 27,000 feet above the ground. Sure, they'll want to know why they're in this situation, but you don't have to tell them right away. You can fill in the background as the adventure progresses. Beginning an adventure with the heroes stumbling onto another cast member's problem also gets the story going quickly. For example, you could open an adventure by describing a woman who runs through a spaceport, clutching a package and throwing frightened glances at the six armed agents chasing her. She is obviously in the middle of her own story, and now it's up to the players to decide how their heroes will interact with that situation. Opening an adventure in the middle of the action starts the story off with a bang, as the players must react quickly to the events playing out around their heroes, events that may involve life or death. This type of opening may spring from the continuation of a previous game session's cliffhanger or an event that occurred during an interlude. All right, yeah, I like that. I like it's not always, you're sitting in a bar or a tavern or whatever. It's I like this idea. Your adventure opens with the heroes hurtling out of a plane 27,000 feet above the ground. Okay, do they have parachutes? Are they being tossed? What how are they going to adjust to the situation? Like that's I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can do with it, but you are absolutely throwing them uh, into the action right away. Um, oh, now I want to try that sometime. Like just literally start, all right, here's what's happening. And just see what the players do. Oh, I think that would be great. All right. Let's see. Excuse me 1 second. Okay. All right. Planned adventures. A planned adventure is the traditional approach to role playing. Designing a planned adventure requires you to develop a full outline of the story you envision, though you still need to leave room for the players to perform. Remember, you set the events in motion, and your players determine the way events play out. The first steps in designing a planned adventure are covered in the spontaneous adventure section. You need a basic story idea, a background, a supporting cast, and a trigger to get the adventure rolling. But that's not everything a planned adventure contains. You also need to develop a plot line that describes the way the adventure will unfold. So, this is always the hard part. This is why people struggle, or some people struggle with adventure, or like pre-made modules. That's what I want to say. Because they're worried about railroading. Again, that is where my biggest struggle is railroading players just a little too often. But the thing is, it can still work. In my personal opinion, the module that I'm running the players through, I'm kind of going along the storyline, but I haven't forced them to do anything. It's all been, it's all evolved naturally. In fact, like for some of the players, since they're all established game masters, I'm actually going to ask them to read the adventure afterwards, just to get an idea of what they think about how I did, how I dealt with the module, how accurate I was, things like that. I definitely want that feedback as well. So, yeah, it's you're creating a plot line. You can end up railroading the players, but if you do it right, maybe they're going to follow it along anyways. All right, plot line. An adventure plot line has similarities to the plot line of any novel, movie. Sorry, lots of scrolling. Motion picture or television episode. You're presenting the players with the initial idea and the impetus of the tale, as well as the actions and reactions of the supporting cast and environment of the setting. Your players provide the rest as they use their heroes' actions to form an interactive tale, a group story. A planned adventure isn't a rigid linear story in which every event leads directly to another event. Although you can give your outline a linear structure for ease of use, let your players influence it through the actions of their heroes. Because of the nature of role playing, you usually can't predict what your players will decide to do next. Your outline should be fluid and malleable. The heroes should have the freedom to go their own way, approach every conflict as they see fit, and follow their own instincts. In this way, they help shape the unfolding plot. This is where I struggle. I mean, it's all fine and good to say, "Hey, this is what you should do." It's a different thing entirely to actually do it. So, all right, let's see if they give some better ideas for it. All right, acts. Build your plot line in the classic act structure used in stage plays. This story form is a good model to follow in adventure design. Short, one session adventures are played out in a single act. Extended, epic length adventures requiring several sessions of gameplay consist of 3 acts. The one act adventure doesn't have a complex, multi layered plot. It is a straightforward tale with a minimum of locations, twists, and supporting cast members. These are adventures in which the heroes know exactly what they need to do and they go out and do it. For example, the sample adventure design outlined on the previous page has the makings of a good one-session adventure. The heroes know they have to rescue Dr. Khan and return her and her relic to the Academy. It's just a matter of foiling the first group of pirates, getting transport, and avoiding the rest of the pirates during the journey to Cobalt 4. A 3-act adventure can deal with more complex storylines, taking advantage of the larger scope of play. Think of the first act as the setup, where you introduce the basics of the plot, provide a goal, and let the heroes interact with situations that lead them toward the second act. Act 2 features encounters and obstacles as the heroes try to resolve the situation, as well as a variety of complications before the heroes can achieve their goal. Act 3 presents the climax and resolution of the story, pulling all the threads together for the conclusion. With some more planning, the sample adventure design on the previous page could be turned into a 3-act story. The first act would involve dealing with the events that lead from the trigger scene. The second act takes place during the journey to Cobalt, and the third act plays out on Cobalt as the heroes meet their final challenge prior to delivering the artifact to its destination. The 3-act structure opens the door to more story possibilities. The collector and the pirate leader, Captain Talon, might not come on stage during a straightforward 1-act adventure, but they might be pivotal characters in a longer and more complex plotline. All right, you know what? Let's back up. Let's take a look at the sample adventure design. All right. Sample adventure. Idea. The heroes must carry the Orion relic safely to Director Adam Stiles at the Academy of Science on Cobalt 4. All right. Background. The Orion relic is an alien artifact uncovered from the asteroid belt designated as Orion Field 1278-C. It was discovered by an Academy team member under the supervision of Dr. Laura Khan. Unfortunately, Dr. Khan's research vessel was attacked by Urzog pirates, oh, those dastardly Urzogs, on its way to the Destral space station. Although she was badly wounded, Dr. Khan managed to reach Destral with her package. Now all she has to do is meet up with the security detail before the pirates catch her. Supporting cast: Dr. Laura Khan, Urzog pirates, Captain Talon, the pirate leader, the mysterious collector who wants the relic and may make an appearance or two as the adventure unfolds. The trigger. Read or paraphrase this opening scene to the players. You and your companions arrive at the Destral space station without incident. You've accepted an assignment to serve as security detail for a scientific expedition that's returning from the field, mostly because the money is good and you are heading to the Cobalt system anyway. You're supposed to meet up with a Dr. Laura Khan and her team of scholars, get them off this station, and deliver them to Director Adam Stiles at the Academy of Science on Cobalt 4. It should be an easy way to make a cool $50K. You're watching the crowd when you notice a commotion near the northeast docking ring. A stunned mob parts to let a bruised and bleeding woman in an Academy jumpsuit pass through. She carries an object wrapped in stained carbonate cloth as she hobbles in your direction. Through the dust, blood, and grime, you think you recognize the woman from your employment orders. This could be Dr. Khan. Before you can react, a gang of motley but well-armed spacers bursts from the crowd. One of the thugs pulls a pistol and shouts, "That's far enough. I want that object." He fires a single shot, catching the woman in the back and driving her to the deck plating. The gang rushes toward her. What are you going to do? If this is a spontaneous adventure, your work is done. The next move is up to the players, as you've left them with a clear-cut story decision to make. Help the woman or leave her to the ruthless pirates. You can develop the rest as you and your players interact and play out the story. Do the heroes get involved? Is Dr. Khan alive? How do they get off the station? How do they shake the pirates? Does the mysterious collector show up? Do the pirates work for him? These are just some of the questions that suggest themselves as this trigger scene runs its course. If this is a planned adventure, then the trigger serves as the beginning of your adventure outline. You still have a few things you need to develop, like an act structure, various planned scenes, and a possible conclusion as described later in this chapter. So I like what they're saying, the way that they're putting this together. You can really see where, okay, it's a spontaneous adventure, it's a one shot. Great. Help the doctor get the artifact and get out. Done. Nice and simple. But if you want to make it that longer adventure, there's all sorts of stuff. Even just giving, this is just a light outline. Obviously there's going to be challenges from travel times, things like that. So this is a lot of fun. I like that. All right, scenes. Think of each act as a portion of the story that has its own beginning, middle, and end. The basic structure of an act contains 3 scenes, each of which can be either a challenge scene, a combat scene, or an encounter scene. The beginning scene is the trigger that starts the action. The middle scene provides the complications and obstacles, like a whole bunch of locked doors. The final scene features the climax of the act, usually a minor resolution and a dramatic high note, like the saboteurs coming back to the station and trying, to eliminate you so they can get their plan back on track. Just saying. Oh, cool. All right. I have a feeling I'm going to come back to all these sidebars. All right. That pushes the heroes to the next act. This can be any complication that makes the heroes want to see what happens next. You can put the heroes in jeopardy, ending on a cliffhanger, or you can have the heroes learn a crucial or emotionally moving piece of information, a clue that gets them on the right track or sends them hurtling into the next scene. Although an adventure can contain as many acts and scenes as you need to tell your story, the basic structure of a 3-act adventure looks like this. Act 1, Scene 1, trigger. Scene 2, complications. Scene 3, minor resolution and dramatic high note. Same for Act 2. And then Act 3 just changes Scene 3 to be a major resolution and climax. Okay, so yeah, again, you're gonna get back to Cobalt 4 and deliver the professor and the artifact that she's found. Elements of scenes. To be sure that a scene contains all the necessary elements, just think of it as an adventure in miniature and realize that each scene has all the same elements that an adventure has: action, mood, setting, supporting cast, and a goal. The only one of these elements that wasn't discussed earlier in the adventure triggers section is the goal. When you design a scene, you should have in mind exactly what you want the heroes to accomplish before the scene ends. The goal of a challenge scene is to solve a problem, circumvent an obstacle, or in some other way overcome a challenge. In a combat scene, the goal is to win the battle, escape, or otherwise survive the scene relatively intact. In an encounter scene, the goal can be more subtle. It could involve gathering information, striking a bargain, making a purchase, tricking a guard, or just interacting with new characters. Okay, I like how they're putting that. That actually puts a lot of things in perspective for me about just setting a goal for the scene. Because you've got your setup, okay, how I put you in this situation, and then you've got your goal, what I want you to accomplish. Obviously the setup and the scene and the mood, all that kind of stuff is going to contribute to how the players solve the goal. But I guess as long as you have those, that should be more than enough for your players to be able to, to take that and adjust and just move, be able to move through without railroading them. Okay. I'm really glad I'm reading this chapter. All right. How do you decide when a scene ends? Obviously, if the scene has a clear goal, then it ends when the heroes achieve the goal. However, you need to make allowances for the possibility that the heroes might fail or that their players might make story decisions that send them off in a different direction. In these cases, you'll need to fashion alternate endings. Which is fine. I mean, because you can say like if they fail, so then it's not so much that they failed, it's okay, how do you work with the failure? So in this case, Dr. Khan gets captured by the pirates with the artifact. Well, you failed in the goal of protecting the professor, so well, guess what? We're changing the plan, and the new scene is you going to rescue the professor and get the artifact back. So you've got a new goal, you've got a different scene, because originally it was going to be on your ship. Now you have to get onto the pirate ship again. All okay. I feel like I'm improving here. Alternates. Sometimes the heroes go off in a different direction that doesn't follow the outline you're prepared. Hey, like I was just talking about. That's okay. Spontaneity makes role-playing games fun, exciting, and unpredictable. However, you can plan for some possible variations if your players stray. Plan for 2 or 3 alternate paths that you can eventually use to get back to the main story. If the players go in a direction that takes them away from your original idea, that's okay. You may need to devise a follow-up scene quickly, but that's not as difficult as it may seem. As long as you have a strong sense of the story you're telling and what sorts of opportunities for action and challenges the story presents. Scene boosters. Finally, a full-length adventure may need a scene booster or two to help you keep it moving. Here are a few types of boosters you may want to plan on when designing a full-length adventure. Floaters. A floater isn't tied to a specific point in the plot. Instead, it's an event that you can insert whenever you want. The purpose of a floater is to make things interesting, to provide a bit of comic relief, or to spring a false clue or two on the players when they think they've solved the mystery of the day. Consider a floater as a short burst of action, a small rain cloud that drifts through the plot, waiting for you to unleash the brief shower within it. Here's a floater that you can drop into the sample adventure trigger. As the heroes race toward Cobalt 4, they suddenly pick up a distress signal. The ship's sensors indicate that except for the hero's ship, the craft being operated by the pursuing pirates, and the source of the distress call, no other vessels are in the immediate vicinity. The call comes from a damaged trader whose power plant is blown and whose life support systems are offline. The pirates get a chance to catch up if the heroes stop to help, but the heroes could gain a friend for life, or at least a merchant who owes them a favor. If the heroes ignore the distress call, the merchant makes note of their craft. When he's finally rescued, his goal shifts to finding the heroes and making them pay for leaving him. They now have a new enemy who can pop up in future adventures, either as a floater again or an integral part of the story. Oh, I like that. Well, yo, it's me, the floater. What's up, Glenn? So I get why they're calling it a floater, but I do think they maybe could have picked a different term. But again, it's a plot point that or side plot that just kind of floats around and you just stick it wherever you need it, which isn't making it any less awkward. But yeah, it's yeah, you don't have to have floaters, but again, if you want to give the players something to do, I like that. I mean, you could do this because this is a future adventure design. It's like I want to see how my players react, and then we're gonna, if they go and rescue the guy, cool, NPC for the next adventure. If they don't, NPC villain for the next adventure. I like how they put that together. It's totally optional, but I still like it. All right, links. It's always good to build in a few links to the heroes. Early on in a campaign, you can key links to a character's role-playing attributes, especially motivation, perks, and flaws. Later, once you've gotten to know the heroes, you can create more personalized links to better tie characters and story together. Links aren't scenes, they're subplots designed to fit into the existing story or to work as a parallel construction to the primary tale. Links can add new elements to the overall plot, or they can inspire improvisation and character development on the part of the players. A motivation link appeals to a hero's primary reason for adventuring, while a perk link or a flaw link provides opportunities for heroes to make use of these elements. For example, if a hero in the group is dirt poor, then you might add a link to take advantage of his flaw, such as a clue that waits in a formal restaurant. The dirt poor character will have a hard time making it past the posh restaurant's maitre d' to obtain that clue. In the sample adventure described on page 211, the collector is an obvious choice as the catalyst for a link. This mysterious figure can exploit the hero's weaknesses in order to acquire the relic. Using a character's code of honor or infamy against him, feeding an obsession or phobia, or taking advantage of a primitive or spineless character are all ways to use the collector to manipulate link subplots. Twists. Never tell the players or their heroes the complete truth, at least not until the final act of the adventure, and sometimes not even then. Save a few surprises to throw at them, or plan a few twists to use if they guess your original plot too quickly. This isn't cheating, it's a way to keep the interactive tale fresh for both you and the players. It's also a way to send the plot in a new direction when things begin to bog down. Consider a twist as a lesser trigger that you can use in the middle of an act or whenever you need to get the action moving again. Twists keep everyone alert and excited. Sometimes you can't plan twists, instead, you have to improvise them in response to the action. Just remember that twists make the unexpected occur or the unexpected fail to occur. Yeah, actually, that's one thing that's kind of funny on the adventure that I'm running is I don't think the players know what's happening yet. Like they're reacting to stuff, but I don't think they know why they're doing stuff. So I haven't had to, luckily I haven't had to twist them yet. But you know, I don't think I'm ready for that anyways. I'm bad at twists. I'm very direct. All right, interludes and transitions. Sometimes you need to collapse time before moving to the next scene or act. You can use interludes and transitions to accomplish this. Interludes usually occur off camera with the players and game master simply discussing what occurs during this downtime. During interludes, characters can conduct research, train, improve skills, purchase equipment, rest, recover, or do whatever else is appropriate and allowable within the time frame. Plan for a few interludes in a full-length adventure. It's usually best to use them between acts, but whether that works depends on the demands and needs of the story. Transitions can occur during play or between sessions, especially when the game master determines that nothing significant can occur during this brief downtime. Sure, some transitions can last for a long time, but that time is almost always spent getting to the next scene or act. Think in terms of movies you've seen when you plan out transitions. Whenever a scene ends, there's a fade out and then a fade in. During the fade, the heroes have moved to the next location and time has advanced. Oh, apparently I did not keep scrolling. Props. Props are items you can use to make props are items you can use to bring the action to life. Okay, to bring the action to life. They include handouts, maps, illustrations, or photographs, music and sound effects, and any other items you may need to add an extra dimension to the adventure. Handouts. A handout is an object that you give the players for them to examine and keep. It contains some information which can be true, false, or some combination of the two. A representation of a newspaper page or clipping, a scrawled note found at a murder site, a business card, and a computer screen full of data are examples of handouts. One of the best aspects of handouts is that your players can gain information without you having to read it to them. Thus, they can stay in character. This is actually something like going off of the adventure that I'm running. So it includes two handouts. One of them is a map, which obviously we'll talk about here in just a second. The other one was a flow chart That was for the game master. So that's another thing. Make your own handouts. It doesn't have to be something to actually hand out to the players. Make it for yourself. Um, it was a flow chart for how to deal with a computer, whether you're trying to hack it, deal with the AI, things like that. Um, and like having that actually helped out a lot uh, for uh, for actually getting through that part of the adventure. So that's one thing I'm going to say is don't be afraid to make your own handouts. Maps. Almost any adventure needs at least one map to depict the area in which the adventure unfolds and to keep track of the locations of all the heroes and supporting cast members as they move from place to place. Any single map is either a Game Master map or a player map. Game Master maps are for your use only. They contain encounter locations and other important notes you require to run the game. You don't want the players to see this kind of map. You might need maps of the town, city, world, or other location where the adventure takes place. You also might want to have diagrams of ships or specific rooms where action will take place. You don't have to map every possible location within the area of your adventure. For instance, if the story's only encounter scene takes place in a hardware shop, then you don't need to map the rest of the city block. You need maps for some challenge scenes and most combat scenes. Player maps are used to show players what their heroes can see at a given moment, or they may be special kinds of handouts that the heroes generate, a computer diagram, blueprints, etc. Some are complete, and others are purposely left unfinished for dramatic reasons. However, any map that the players can hold, examine, and point to greatly enhances the visual imaginings of a role-playing session. So the premise of the adventure was that they've been on this station, this space station, for a couple of months. It's not that big. I mean, the description is that it's about the size of like a 10-story building, but regardless, I mean, 10 stories, if you're there for a couple of months, you're going to have explored all 10 stories. So, it's still something that the players would be able to see and explore. So the module just says, "Hey, take the map, give it to the players." It has all the markings, all the stuff on it. All of it's open information. So, but again, you know, if you need to give them a blank map, you have the one with all the markings on it. All right, illustrations. Nothing conveys mood and emotion like a good illustration or photograph of what the heroes see. You don't have to be an artist to prepare visual effects for your game session. Just find something close to what you're imagining in a book, magazine, or newspaper, or the internet, or ChatGPT, or Grok, or Google, or, clip art, or cartoon, whatever. I mean, you can get the images from anywhere. Then make a copy and show it to the players at the appropriate moment. Obviously, that's not new information, but still. I love this old art. We're just going to stare at it for a second. All right, music. All right, this would drive me nuts. A, keeping track of it, and B, making sure that it's the appropriate stuff. So I'm not going to try music, but we'll read it anyways because some people like it. Playing music in the background during a game session is a great way to set the mood of an adventure. Soundtracks from movies can convey horror, tension, or drama. Certain performers and types of music also work in this fashion, but usually to a lesser extent, as few groups put out one theme albums or CDs. It is the 21st century. It is not 1998 anymore. There are options if you want them. I don't, but that's just me. Various collections of sound effects are available that you might want to use every now and again. Having a scream, creaking door, or other sound effect cued on your CD player, showing its age, can really get the players into the story and probably make them jump too. Other items. You can use just about anything as a prop in an adventure. Exotic puzzles, cool toys, weird objects, whatever. Keep your eyes open. You just might see something that represents an alien artifact, a piece of evidence from a crime scene, or an ancient relic. If players can touch and examine these items, then they can better imagine the scene their heroes are in. Don't go overboard with this kind of prop. Save it for the really special or unusual items, or for adventures where such props will really make the story come alive. Ending an adventure. There are only two guidelines you need to remember about the climax of an adventure. First, an adventure needs to end on a high note. Make the climax of the story full of action and give the heroes plenty to do. The climax has to live up to the scenes that come before it. Let's be honest, you're probably going to end it with combat. Save the worst dangers, the most powerful villains, and the greatest secrets for the climax. Make the stakes high, and the payoff will be even higher, whether the heroes succeed or not. Second, give the heroes plenty to do. Not only should they make story decisions and perform actions, but they also need to be the center of the story. The supporting cast should never show up the heroes, nor should other characters always rescue them. The adventure is about the heroes, so let them take center stage in the climax. If the major villain is too tough for them, let them figure that out and make their own decisions. Sometimes they've got to run away. Again, if it's a major villain, yeah, let him be super powerful. Let him overpower the heroes. They can still succeed at what they were trying to do, but the bad guy gets away. I just because this popped in my head, Inspector Gadget and Dr. Claw. Dr. Claw may have gotten outsmarted, but he got away at the end of the episode. He's still powerful. He still has minions. Inspector Gadget still succeeds. All right. Adventure hooks. Here are a few adventure hooks to get your imagination going, though these story ideas encompass different time frames and science fiction subgenres. You can easily adapt any of them for the type of campaign you want to run. For example, if you change a haunted house into a derelict spaceship and a deadly ghost into a murderous alien, you alter a traditional horror story into a science fiction horror story. All right, so looks like the last couple of pages are going to be just a couple of story hooks. Let's see. Let's just look at one of them. So we've got Hijacked, meh. Installation 251. Murder on Asteroid 36. Or First Contact. Meh, we're not doing First Contact. Definitely not First Contact. Let's do... Okay, you know what? All right, I pre-read it a little bit, so we're going to do Installation 251. Dun, dun, dun. All right, hook number 2, Installation 251. You can use this trigger in any setting, though it's presented here as a contemporary horror science fiction tale. Somewhere in the cold depths of the Alaskan wilderness, inside a secret government facility that doesn't officially exist, scientists are about to let loose a terror from beyond the stars. This creature is a killing machine, bred for battle and designed to hunt and kill with extreme skill. It even seems to enjoy the thrill of the hunt. If it escapes from the facility, humanity is doomed. Background. The military recently captured a spacecraft of alien origin. The vessel, damaged on its trip to Earth, crashed in an isolated region where heavily armed soldiers quickly quarantined it. The remains of the vessel and its wounded occupant were collected and transferred to a secret base in the Alaskan wilderness. Here, a team of scientists began an exhaustive program to learn as much as possible about the creature and its technology. The alien, however, wasn't as badly injured as the scientists believed. It escaped from its cell and began systematically killing the scientists and the soldiers protecting them. Before it could leave the facility, however, one soldier was able to seal the base, trapping the alien and the survivors inside. Time passed without word from the facility, and a storm is about to engulf the area. The heroes are sent to check on the base, though they aren't told anything about the work done there or the guest housed in its depths. That information is classified. The action starts as the heroes arrive at the facility. All right, this is the thing. Let's be honest. That's what they're basing this off of. And while I don't do horror, I'm totally here for it. All right, supporting cast. This one's pretty simple. All you really need to do is detail the alien. Make it pretty powerful, since it should pose a significant threat to not only the heroes, but also the world at large. Maybe it's a self-replicating creature that's about to split in two, or maybe it reproduces by planting eggs in host organisms. such as the base's scientists and soldiers, like an alien. Or maybe reconstructing a deadly weapon from the remains of its spacecraft. Or the remains of the scientists. Okay, that's just gross and disturbing. Does it have any kind of code or conscience that the heroes would recognize, or are its motives totally alien and unfathomable? You might also detail a few scientists or soldiers, members of the base's personnel, who have managed to remain alive since the facility was sealed. These characters can serve as help for the heroes if necessary, or they can require the actions of the heroes to save them. Trigger scene. Read or paraphrase this opening to the players. You arrive at the facility just ahead of the storm. Those swirls of wind and snow already cloak the sky. The code is given to you by the briefing team. The code given to you by the briefing team opens the base's doors. The space beyond is dark and foreboding. Red lights flash in dark recesses, indicating that the base was on alert when the facility was shut down. You step past the thick emergency doors just as a computer voice announces, "This facility is under DEFCON 4 quarantine. Outer emergency doors are being resealed." The huge metal doors begin to slide shut. What do? All right. There's a lot of fun you can have with that. Obviously, like I said, the Thing, aliens, all of that stuff is playing in there. But, it's also got aspects of Predator. It's, there's a lot of familiar scenes in there, but I like how they're using that. It doesn't have to be new. It doesn't have to be unique. Sometimes it's just, let's play our own version of Predator. Let's see how it plays out. Can we reason with it? Do we, is it only just a psychopathic killing machine? Figure it out. Go with your players. So, all right, there we go. There's our instructions for adventures, which means tomorrow we're going to look at optional rules. So, remember, from the player's handbook, there are 3 sets of optional rules: psionics, cybernetics, and mutations. This chapter is going to give a new one, the FX rules, which are basically superpowers. So basically how to deal with optional rules, with your characters. But obviously I haven't read it yet, so we'll learn about that tomorrow. But for right now, honestly, everybody, thank you so much for hanging out. If there's any questions, comments, thoughts, as before I leave, drop them in chat. Let me know. But I do hope you enjoyed it. Drop a like, subscribe if you're new here. Let me know what you thought. Because I think this was actually one of the things I was most looking forward to in the Game Master Guide was, tips for adventures. And this chapter gave a lot. Honestly, this is going to be worth a reread. I just have to do it. And I keep volunteering myself for all sorts of things. So that's a separate problem. But it was great. I like what they did. It's fantastic chapter. Great advice. Probably already exists in other Game Master books all over the place. I don't care. I finally read it. So here we are. So, all right. Well, on that note, it is almost 10 o'clock. I have been up since 2 yesterday afternoon. Anyways, I'm very tired, so I'm going to go to bed. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new here. And if you're watching this on the replay, drop a comment down below. Let me know your tips for being a game master. I'd love to get more of those because I'm bad at this and I need to get better. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.